Part 3. Yes, let's talk. It's finalizing section of our conference because we shall renew later our conferences, and it will be nice if we hold new other conferences dealing with these topics. And our first speaker is TEMO JOJUA, ILIA JOJUA State University, BEDIA Church, and the personality of Queen KOURDAB, depicted in BEDIA Church in on the northern wall. Well, so, and it was said, ask him to speak loudly, please. Yes, we need his voice, louder voice, please. So, and for me, this topic is very, very important and very close not only from scientific point of view. For me, it is something very close internally. I was 19 years old when I paid a visit to Abkhazia. I went there in order to, maybe he said fight. His voice is very, very low, very distant, regrettably. And so for me, it's very organic, and this takes place very frequently, that I try to dedicate one or even two articles to this topic, to this field, and so I try to contribute somehow to this topic. So, and this speech which I like to deliver here now, it proceeds from my own interest, and today I'm to speak with on the mural of the BEDIA Church northern wall, where one of the queens is depicted. So several personalities, several portraits are depicted there, 4 of them on the northern wall of BEDIA Church. And throughout decades, this issue was investigated by a lot of scientists, and on the 3 portraits today, the personalities are revealed. The lecturer is Bagrat III, the main, let's call him tentatively, constructor of this church, under whose order and during his reign this church was built. Then Bagrat V, and according to chronology, yes, this person may be, yes, it dates from the period of the next painting, 14th century. Then here, there also are saints are so depicted. ABKHAZIA'S also made her speech, and she argumentated and proved that this portrait depicts Odishi Prince GEORGI, Dadiani's son, and also his spouse Marek, well known, who is mentioned in Hobby Church wall lettering. So here, first lettering shows the name of the king Bagrat III, then 14th century, second half, Odishi Prince GEORGI III, and then his mother, Queen Marek. Now, concerning northern wall. Northern wall, here situation is complex. Here portraits are in a following just alternation. Young person without beard, very, very green one, and the lettering somehow gives us several, how to say, letters. And Tina Virsaladze, Georgian scientist, supposes that maybe Lamech was written here. Next portrait depicts a young man with a long hair, and this lettering is better. It can be read. Kachaber. Yes, Kachaber is his name. So Lamech and his son Kachaber. Then the third person or third portrait, the middle-aged person, regrettably, there are no letterings under or beside this portrait, and we cannot say who is this person. So the last one in the western part is the woman with the white hat clothes, white bonnet, or something like this. And this lettering is pretty difficult to be verified and discerned. Yes, KOURDAB, as Marika already. Then René Schmerlik Odaf proposed another version. Then Tina Odaf Rusudan and Lia Khaladze proposed as the Rodab. Maybe Rusudan. Rusudan is more proper. So this fact, yes, factological approach. So now identification. How we can identify it? The whole generation since 19th century, Mariam Chubinashvili, René Schmerling, and Tina Versaladze, Rashid, Elia Khalad, and many other scientists dealt with the issue to decipher this writing, this lettering, and solve it somehow. And here I want to single out Elia Khalad and researches, and also I want to say here that Lia Akhaladze's publications are published already, but yes, so I had an opportunity to learn out with this, this book, which was published later, as part of handwriting, and why it's very important taking into account Tina Saladze's book. It was written in the midst of the 20th century, and she stated numerous opinions, and Lia Akhaladze later proved this, having no knowledge about the book and Tina's study. So it looks and it proves that Tina and her opinion were pretty right and pretty proper. So once again, I want to come back to the above-mentioned scientists, Tina Akhaladze and Tina Virsaladze and Lia Akhaladze, and three persons are identified on these murals. First, northern wall. First portrait, young, green man, even without beard, Vamech Dadiani, during then times. He's not, therefore there is no title. He is the senior son of GEORGI Aristari, senior son. Then, next one, depicted after Lamech, youngster, GEORGI Dadiani's second son, Lamech, not Lamech, but Kachaber. Then GEORGI Dadiani himself, and GEORGI II Dadiani's wife. The whole family Vidadianis, senior son, junior son, father and mother or spouses. Concerning identification, you see, everything is very clear and historical. In chronicles, they prove everything. And nothing is to inspire some suspicion or something like this. But one issue must be clarified. And this issue really, this issue is who is depicted, the noble woman, the last in this role. Yes, it says that this is the spouse of Georgi Dadian. But first wife, he had two wives. Tamar, who turned into nun and went to the nunnery, and the second one, Sudan. But neither Sudan nor Tamar, because lettering says us pretty different thing, and Miss ABKHAZIA told us this, and therefore ABKHAZIA agreed with Leo Sharvashidze, who stated, promulgated opinions that this lettering means Rodam, also name of woman, female name, and of course he was suspicious a little bit and not irrefutably stating that here we could have such name, Rosgan. Yes, it's pretty logical opinion, although they can be some details. First, northern wall and its portraits, who at first were instigated and studied by Mr. Marie Brosset, he read such kind of text. KOURDAB. And Marie Brosset decided that this was KOURDAB, this name, because it was wrote by Georgian block capitals. Yes, Queen KOURDAB, Princess KOURDAB. Schmetterling in 1997 published a graphical layout. Also in 1939, Chubinashvili published the graphic or painted graphic, and it shows that this reading was wrong. And KOURDAB. And it shows also how this text was disseminated on fresco. So the alternation, succession of letters, capitals. So yes, KOURDAB, we can read in this way. Then, yes, Rodab never was read there. Yes, but this opinion that it could be Rodab was stated by Leo Sharvashidze. When he said this, he referred to Marie Brosset's article, and even that Marie Brosset read that Rodab. So Rodab, but Marie Brosset even did not propose us such kind of version, and one why Leo Sharvashidze. Why Leo Sharvashidze proposed us this version, that the version, different version, were from these, in a way, last way being Rusudan and so on, was the result of some incorrectness. So, Marie Brosset never showed there and never wrote about Rodab. KOURDAB, this was the version proposed by Leo Shervashidze. So, Rodab. If even Rodab is written there, it's impossible to transform it and read it as Rusudan. Because if we, yes, Rusudan, and here we have several extra redundant letters which we do not need. Maybe these three letters done, they were beginning of an additional lettering, new lettering, but not the complete name Rusudan. So this, you see, this lettering, it's very pending, very close to the figure, to the depicted person painting itself, and therefore, protect from these opinions, if, for instance, Rodab is the result of incorrectness, inaccuracy. So, if we take to Sudan, also it's wrong approach, and this must be read as KOURDAB, as the initiators of this reading launched. So, Northern Wall, Georgi the second Dadiani with his family are depicted. Lamech, senior son, then junior son, KHATIA, then Georgi second himself, and then woman, KOURDAB, with the handkerchief on her head. So, from this arrangement, we may say, and we must say that this KOURDAB is the wife, and nobody else, wife of Georgi the second Dadiani. So, yes, this woman is wife of the Georgi the second Dadiani. Also, we may say that through the explanation of this portrait, this woman is mentioned as KOURDAB. He had two wives. Yes, if we juxtapose these three facts and three approaches, others cannot be existed, but he had third wife. But our historical writing did not know about this yet. Formally, it was hypothesis, not theory, but concerning this issue, one source is very important and showed that hypothesis is genuine. Yes, 11th century Jerusalem. Yes. Yes, and this lettering mentions the queen of the queens, KOURDAB. This document is written by one person, one handwriting there, and with name KOURDAB, we have several other writings and dedications with the same handwriting. The Prince Dadiani, Georgi, his wife, TAMAR, then turned into nun. Also, Catholicos of Abkhazia, Daniel and his son. So it comes out that KOURDAB, and this document dealing with her was written during the reign of Prince Dadiani. This document just deals with directly with GEORGI Dadiani. So, document says that we deal with the KOURDAB, Queen of the Queens. So, KOURDAB and her personality were an unknown to everybody. Elena Metravelli said that this document was written approximately 1370s or 1780s, the same time, the same publication is inaccurate to a certain extent. Elena Metravelli read this KOURDAB as KOURDABISI. You see here we have some small modification. Her name was not KOURDABISI, but KOURDAB. Yes. Yes. He's the, you see, possessive case of the name. He assumed and adopted as the just very original version of this name. So thus she just erred while reading her name. In my opinion, we must ask, who is or who was this Queen of the Queen KOURDAB? And can we put on one and the same desk person in this lettering and depicted on the northern wall? In this document, KOURDAB is mentioned as Queen of the Queens. We have comment of Ephraim Sire, medieval Georgian scholar. He said that in Georgian we may use this title, Queen of the Queens. We may use only if we mention the most holy mother of the god or representative of the royal family. We never the wife, spouse of feudal lord, correct, mentioned as queen. You see, it's a very specific Georgian peculiarity, and it's pretty difficult to translate this into English. Dedopali, it means queen, but some change where modifications were made by medieval paperback writers, and this spouse of feudal grand was mentioned as Diopali. So, this diploma and portrait are coincide in time and geographical area. Why time and geographical area? The diploma of the times where KOURDAB is mentioned, all of them, they belong to and were addressed to Western Georgian feudal grants. And also Separately, the members of the Dadiani family are mentioned and specified. So, the same identification is supported by geographic area, Dadiani and other ones. Never Georgian sources, Georgian diplomats, medieval diplomats had no such facts. And also I should like to present here one more proof that those very diploma, these diplomas were issued by Giorgi Dadiani, and separately in one diploma, his former late spouse Tamar was mentioned. And he also issued the diploma for KOURDAB, third wife. So all these 6 diplomas were written by one and the same writing. So 2 diplomas can be singled out, not phraseology, words, wording are absolutely similar. So they were made not only by one person, but also in one time and so on. So in BEDIA church on the North Pole, so was KOURDAB not first and neither first nor second wife, wives were depicted, but the third one, so-called KOURDAB. So after this identification, so your second Dadiani was KOURDAB his third wife. When she was his wife, and they were sons from KOURDAB, who Giorgi Dadiani have from KOURDAB. So, see, Tina Vissaladze, through her conclusion, I spoke to the experts on art, the main layer of paintings in BEDIA church, the main one just preserved and retained on the northern wall. And therefore, this is genuine painting and genuine layers and genuine dyeing stuff. So, and KOURDAB, which wife was KOURDAB? First was TAMAR, second was Rusudan. TAMAR, irrefutably, unequivocally, was the first wife. Why? Because TAMAR is mentioned along with his husband in the middle of the 14th century in Svaneti diploma and Svaneti chronicles. And concerning Rusudan, she is mentioned on the lettering, in the lettering on the Jumati icon of the most holy mother of the god. So, both sons are mentioned here, and Vamech is mentioned as Dadiani, as mandator to Hotses, or as the Minister of the Interior, and Kahader as Gurieli. So Tamar was the first wife. Second wife was Rusudan. So, but where we can insert KOURDAB as the wife, so we may say that before Tamar, earlier than Tamar, Georgi, he could not have other wife, because before he had no sons. On BEDIA church lettering, both sons are mentioned and depicted. So it's
so უსუდანის მიმართებას აქ ყურადღებას იპყრობს ორი საინტერესო ფაქტი. პირველი, ბედიის ეკლესიის წარწერაში
just Rusudan's connection. So in BEDIA church inscription, so the Vamekhi the Kakhaber are occupying official positions. They are mentioned without the titles. And by Rusudan, so Jimat, so chief angel, so icon inscription. Kakhaber has Guriel's title, and Vamekhi is the warlord. So, and Bedi his portraits and Jumat, so icon, so of the chief angel. So chronological order is such. First we have Bedia, so painting, and then after that we have Jumati icon inscription. The same conclusion is confirmed by the fact that in Jerusalem Jvari monastery, so Holy Cross monastery, so Agabi was given to the former, to the first, so was giving assistance to his first wife and KOURDAB, but between these entities whose Agapi was given by Georgi Dadiani, we don't see Rusudan, which makes me thinking that while giving this Agapi, Rusudan is alive, and this brings us logically so to the conclusion that Rusudan was the third wife. So the first was TAMAR Komaina, then was KOURDAB, and finally though the wife was Rusudan. While giving Agapi, while having assistant, Rusudan is still alive. So another question. So when we define the order, but at what time he had, so at this point, Tamar's and the third Rusudan's, third wife's, so Rusudan's wedding period, which had been clarified before me. So Rusudan so is married to Georgi Dadiani in the 70s, 80s, because in 1984 she died. I don't share that Georgi II Dadiani died in 1384. That it is based totally on Vakhushi Batonishvili's tidings. That gives us many question marks, but I will not enter this discussion because it is not basically changing the picture. Georgi Dadiani seems to be died in 1318, 1319. So at that time he has Rusudan as his wife. So the KOURDAB he should have earlier, so as a wife. We know also Tamari and Georgi are mentioned together in Swaneti, in Swaneti Soul's Annals. So in Swaneti Soul's Annals, so has been dated as the 13th century second half, so monument. And this date was based on Pavle Ingorova's presumption. So up until the last time, there was no possibility to define the chronology of this monument. So the scientists made the logical conclusion that in the Soul's Annals was mentioned Georgi Dadiani, who was active in the 14th century. And it cannot be of the second part of the 13th century, and it should be transferred to the 14th century. And in the National Center of Manuscripts, so Burgvali Church, so belonging to Burgvali Church, so the Bible, which is in a given description of manuscripts, but one page, so writing was omitted, which during the description was considered as part of the manuscript, but it is later, so additional writing. It says that Etseri father Antonio Priani so visited the Holy Land. He worshipped at the tomb of Jesus, so the Jvari monastery, and the Bible which was stolen by the Muslims. by his own money, he bought out and sent to Khurvali church. And there is a date that everything happened during the king, so Bagrat V and Georgi VII, so ruling. So this is the Chronicons date in 1380. And why 1380 is important for us? That in 1380, so the inscription is done by Anton Onopriani, who on his part is mentioned in Svaneti Soul's annals together with mother and father. So we can insist on the fact, so and say insistively, that not only be relying on mentioning Georgi Dadiani in Svaneti Soul's on Chronicles, so Soul's annals, but mentioned Anton as the young age, so that the Svaneti Soul's Chronicles, Soul's annals, so was compiled not in the 13th century, but in the middle of the 14th century, in the 40th, 50th of the 13th century. Then Svaneti Soul's Chronicles, annals was compiled, so was crafted. So Georgi Dadiani had wife Tamar. So we have two thresholds, 40th and 50th of the 14th century, and the upper threshold is 80th, 90th, 80s and 90s. Then Georgi has his wife Rusudan. So, and we have 2030 chronological stretch. This is 1360, 1370. Then Georgi should have the second wife. So after Tamar and before Rusurdan. So the because this chronological discussion brings us to this conclusion. So it turns out that BEDIA temple portrait with KOURDAB, so depicted on it, KOURDAB is playing a decisive role. So in this dating, is to be performed at the time when Georgi Dadiani had so KOURDAB, and this should be happening during 1360, 1370, and the portrait should be dated by the same period, and subsequently by the same period should be dated BEDIA Ecclesia drawing, so the main layer, so which Tina Virsaladze pertained to the skillful man, so to the painter who made this portrait. Yes, I wanted to say that is Georgi II Dadiani's wife, about who we didn't know anything, and it was the second wife of Georgi Dadiani. Number three, that Georgi Dadiani, KOURDAB, so wife, he said in 1360, 1370, the portrait was performed in 1360, 1370, and number five, that in 1316, 1370 should be dated BEDIA church painting main drawing, so main layer of drawing. Thank you very much. We have four speakers: KHATIA, ALANIA, MARIAM, GUNIA, KOBAKHIDZE, KVATSABAIA, Scientific Research Lab, ABKHAZIA'S Moambe. So Ilori church under the conditions of occupation. So greetings. So firstly, I would like to render my sincere gratitude to the organizers of the conference. So we have been granted second time the opportunity to speak the cultural heritage of Abkhazia and ethnography, which is under threat. So our presentation refers to Ilori Church, where on annual basis, so by different intensity, vandalism works are being done and culture genocide inspired. So our goal is briefly to overview Ilori Church, so important details of history, and to give special attention to the monument's deplorable statues. So I would like to tell you that it has been 18 months. The organization, members of ABKHAZIA Moambe, we prepare the album, 3 language albums and documentary films, so scientific popular in nature. And we think that with funding sources will be appearing to finish this cause. So right now I will make the presentation, which will be conducted by the member of ABKHAZIA Moambe, KHATIA ALANIA.
გამოჩნდა უკვე თქვენი.
კი ბატონო, ძალიან კარგი. მოკლედ, როგორც გიორგი აღნიშნა,
As Georgi has, we will be speaking about Ilori Church and what happened after the occupation, what intervention were carried out. We will say a couple of words about the church, that this is the one of the outstanding piece of the Georgian architecture, not by the architectural characteristics, but it has the long historical importance due to the fact that it has the unique inscriptions on the eastern facade. So it was built in the 13th century, first half. So, and there are 3 stages of the Georgian alphabet are given on the facade, and it is very important. So to keep the authentic face of this church or returning to it. So this face, which is being changed on annual basis. So, and this is outside our control. However, we raised this issue at several conferences and we try to outreach to international society. So this is the whole type of the construction. And it has different roofing. Several times it was restored. You see how the restoration started after the occupation. On the first photo, on both photos, we see the after the occupation, the restoration. So I would like to comment that I was little, but I remember the church. It is totally painted in white. And absolutely so unreasonable decorative walls are given there, and it has no connection with the original decorative walls, decorative arches. This is the western facade, the interior, where the tiles are laid on the floor. And this is the main building of the temple, main temple. This is the only ornament on the western facade. So it's in the first photo we have it how it looked on the in the beginning of the century. So before, not before the occupation, but during 2 centuries, the Russian authorities were changing the face of the Georgian temples, and the Ilori was not an exception. However, today, so it has totally been changed. So on the previous photo, on the facade, we have the appendix, where the windows are made mimicking this decoration, but they are distorted. Besides that, to speak about the most important facade, which gives importance to the church, with the, so this is the eastern facade with the inscriptions. You cannot read the inscriptions today, and without painting, there is St. George's relief depiction, so which escaped the painting. So this is the low relief, and how authentic is it? It requires a separate research. And this has not been proved, and we cannot say that this is authentic. Regarding the facades, so this is the trace of remake after the occupation, when the first restoration happened. So then they changed their mind, and they decide, firstly they painted in pink, and then they painted in golden colors. And we show the both photos to show you the signs of remake. We can compare the photos of the eastern facade. So you see on the previous photos that we see the contours of the depictions which were painted over, and we cannot today see any contours of paintings and the inscriptions on the wall. After this, we see only St. George's image, so which escaped, escaped the painting, and this is the photo of the previous century. If we compare it with the current photo, so the dome. This is before the final variant. So the photo made before 2010. So there was a small dome, but later on, we see on the other slide. So the other dome was placed. And you see the difference between these two photos. How the size of the dome increased. Photo shooting was very difficult. And we have the records actually by which we were using. So today we can again save this church and restore its primary shape. And in the 20th century, the cross. So, and after we have the onion type Russian style of a dome. Interior is also distorted by the modern ventilation devices. You quite well see that on the photo. On the western facade. And this is the southern facade. We don't have the interior photo. So this ventilation appliances are very badly placed. Also, we have the information plaque, the information stand, which is loaded with information. This is the general view of the temple. So the interior, in the central part, we have the murals still remaining, but it is in a deplorable condition and requires the emergency conservation and restoration. And southern door is used as the storage facility, and it is dangerous that the wall painting will be damaged. So as concerns the Russian inscriptions. So this is the bell tower and the gate. So from 2007 it was repainted. So it had the pink lines on the edges. In 2007-8. So on the bell tower, you can see whether it was scratched off or why this happened. Well, we cannot perceive this factor. So as we see how the bell tower was, how it was looked in the 20th century, how it looked in the 20th century. And if we look at the bell tower and the temple, so on the first and the second photo, you see that it was painted in white. Several times the bells has been changed, so by the Russian side. In 2012, so this happened, so we got this photo by the social network. So regarding the gate, regarding the fence, in 2021, while cleaning, and one more thing, this is so the place for baptizing, so which appeared lately, so by the iron concrete, built by iron concrete, so in white color. So this, so before it was built, the baptizing was happening in the baptizing building was erected. So, and what laws were violated while the restoration work? So if we mention that. So so we read in the Venice Charter, so that the monuments are giving the spiritual culture, the picture of spiritual culture of the nation, and we should take care to preserve them for the future generations. So the commitment should be made, so to provide the overall. So Venice Charter announces the attitude to the cultural heritage, which is shared by the civilized world. Besides Venice Charter, there are the set of laws that is aimed at the protection of the cultural monuments, restoration. These conventions are the European Culture Convention, UNESCO Convention in terms of the protection of the cultural heritage while warfare. So also the illegal transfer, so European Architectural Heritage Protection Convention. So besides that, within any country, there are the laws that are regulating the protection of the cultural heritage, like in Georgia, the Georgian law on culture, the Georgian law on also Georgia. From 1999, Georgia is the member of the European Council, means that we share all the EU Council Convention, so and their protection. After becoming member of UNESCO, Georgia became member of 13 conventions of UNESCO. which implies the protection of the cultural heritage. So the UN member is Russian Federation, who by the rule should be observing every convention, but her assistance. So this is happening on the territory not controlled by the Georgian authorities. So neither Georgian side nor the international missions are allowed to evaluate the situation in this place, and we will also touch upon the violation of the laws which related to the so-called rehabilitation of Ilori church. So-called rehabilitation of Ilori church, Ilori temple, so was characterized by the damaging procedures. So the law on cultural heritage of Georgia was breached. So section 6, article 24, which defines conducting any work against the demands of the law is violation of the law. Also, Article 24, paragraph 6 implies the character of the restoration activities. So restoration can be done according on the grounds of the design documents, so based on the scientific analysis and research. For us, it is not clear on what materials, so based the occupying side, while the restoration. So on the Article 26, we have the complex plan of conservation of the Ilori temple. Namely, should be compiled the plan of conservation, which will be. So they should be agreed the normative acts that
of those works
would provide the rehabilitation development made regulation. Article 36 defines the individual protection safeguarding measures of the monument. So the physical protection area is the territory around the immovable monument. So, and in the vicinity is prohibited such activities which may damage or will pose the damage to the monument. We don't know what is happening in the adjacent territory to the Ilori temple, whether the activities are being carried out which may damage this construction. The occupation side does not neglect the Georgian constitution and law, but for the international community it should be thought-provoking that Russia is neglecting the UNESCO Council of Europe. For example, in Venice Charter is said that restoration is the mean that is of a special nature, and so implies the respecting of the original material, and you know how it was changed. So during the convention,
towards the relics of those pieces of cultural heritage which still are not damaged. So, for instance, we see in the internal courtyard modern construction, which is pretty uncertain and actually has no meaning, usage, and etc. So, from this point of view, we want to say that state must take this into account, that very state who is in charge of that territory just informally, because in spite of their occupants, they must take into account these universal international provisions and international requirements. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks for your attention. Well, it's pity that such facts take place, and thanks for this. Oh, yes, Bashilava, she's here. Yes, Mrs. Bashilava from Chubinashvili Center. Yes, of course. All these speeches were very, very informative, and I should like to say that everything really was very well delivered. Topics were selected in a very appropriate, very reasonable way, and I think that these demands which were stated in all the speeches, they must be faced, just adapted and responded. So they must be met. And of course, documents with appeals, addresses to Russian Tsar, to, yes, these appeals made by Abkhaz nobility to Russian Tsars. And these appeals, they unilaterally, they stated directly that they can, these noblemen, Abkhaz noblemen, they can retain their self-awareness, just only being within the Georgia and in the Soviet and everything. What takes place now there, Abkhaz actually, they're out of, how to say, out of rules or they are offside, let's say. So they're offside, and they are not, nobody counts them, and actually they are extinguished gradually. And we know Lia Haladze, she will agree that when it was disseminated in Abkhazia, the information, indigenous population was very positive and met it in a very positive way. And Tina frequently said, semi-detective, semi-adventurous way of couching her scientific information. Really, it was very interesting, really. 14th century TEMO JOJUA's speech concerning KOURDAB. Yes, but the BAGHRAZI'S third portrait, yes, it could be really painted at the second time, like David before the Builder's portrait in 14th century. So this, yes, it's BAGHRAZI third, because BAGHRAZI's personality is very tightly interconnected, linked with BEDIA's history. BEDIA was built during his reign, and I presume that it's difficult to say everything. No, not to omit something, because we are in a very difficult conditions, but we must invigorate and we must spur up our activity, and maybe our efforts, the ice will be broken, and our Abkhaz colleagues, they won't refuse to respond. They will respond if they are permitted. I beg your pardon for taking your time. Thank you, madam. Yes, well, who wants to have the floor? Floor is open. I should like to ask Miss Lia Haladze. Miss Lia Haladze, you really presented us very interesting speeches so far. Your modern Abkhaz counterpart, they're aware about the studies and researches of Mr. GEORGI Arzimba of then times. Joseph Arzimba, no, he is to a certain extent maltreated, and actually we may say that they dislike him, and Therefore, 10 years later, after his death, when his study, when his research was published, the toponyms were changed, because in his articles, newspaper articles, these places, these sites, toponyms were changed. And for instance, Galasuri, he uses this term, and in the book later, which was published 10 years later after his death, this term was changed. Therefore, I tried to highlight and set forth his contribution. His merits, his meritorious, because he tried to have ocular knowledge of all these ancient letterings and other things, to bring them to Sohumi, to publish data over them. And regrettably, today, these items and these letterings are out of exhibition. You see, the only lettering which is presented, attained there, is the Uzbek Dadianis writing, and a lot of things they just threw out beyond the fence, regrettably. So, and finally, they really maybe being shown, they took it back and again displayed in the exhibition. Also, very, very important, very valuable lettering by GEORGI Vasilis, well-known medieval person, and also one more lettering which is depicted on a crucifixion. Other letterings, we are not aware about the lettering by Luka Martinova, who was brought by Josep Arzimba. So maybe these letterings or these pieces there are in some funds, in some storages. I don't think that they would dare to destroy them and deteriorate completely. And lettering. There are letterings which are broken, and they are poorly preserved. It was possible to preserve them in a better way, to restore it, to repair, and so on. But they disdained and did it in a very inadvertent way. Actually, they did not care. So, Josep Arzimba, he's disliked by Abkhaz. Yes, I even mentioned that his works, maybe he wasn't a professional historian, expert of art, and so on, but he cooperated to Georgi Chubinashvili, Leo Choulishvili. He died in 1942. Then our science just got forward. A lot of new things were just discovered, published, and but Abkhaz regrettably disliked him. And the majority of these pieces which were discovered by him are located at Sohum Museum. Yesterday, the opinions were stated that fundamental studies, fundamental researches by our Georgian scientists of older, former, modern generation must be translated, etc. For instance, even which are not fastidious, which are fair, Like, for instance, these articles by Arzimba, Joseph Arzimba. And they must be translated, published, or those ones who belong to the British or American scientists. And it will be nice if we translate them and just disseminate within the scientific world and to make them very, very popular in order to make them more comprehensive, yes, and understandable if they are very academic. Because we have no such books at our libraries, at our shelves, and it will be a good contribution. So, and it was very interesting, very topical, very demanding. This conference really was very, very, it took place on time, in time. So, therefore, we are grateful to all participants, and maybe this conference, on the behalf of this conference, we address UNESCO or any other international bodies about the preservation, protection of cultural heritage on occupied territories, to explain them in order to avoid, to avoid these vandal acts. We cannot enter those territories, but maybe international bodies, international representatives, their staff will be able to do this. Please, madam, your turn. No, nothing. Nothing. Just, yes, when you spoke about this you spoke about this very good author, good researcher, maybe we shall do this and to shed light on his activity more, to publish his articles, his works, and so on. Thank you. Yes, so you really stated my opinion and my approach. For instance, those works, when I compared his articles and his whole famous book, because in his articles he wrote one thing, and in this book, a lot of things are completely changed, you see, because there are some Abkhaz suffixes, Abkhaz endings in phraseology, in phrases, and this approach, this way, really deprives him from his Georgian world, from Georgian self-awareness. So thanks a lot. Now, concerning the restoration of BEDIA church, yes, there are three layers. First one during the construction, the second one, maybe 13th, 14th century, 13th, 14th centuries, and Schmerling, Leosha, Rashid, and many others, they highlighted this field, this section, this topic. And in our book, we also write that there is a lettering made by Constantine, the King of Kings, Georgian king. So we have there the letterings made by Nicholas the Catholicos and Sopron from BEDIA, the great ecclesiastic personalities, great clergyman. So yes, we speak about during period which deals with King David, the son David Narims or David Jr. So, among all others, this is the most visualized. You can see it in the best way. And when, yes, TEMO mentioned here Marie Brosset and the fresco itself by Bagrat III, in my opinion, this fresco, it does not belong to 10th century. More, if we say in a more accurate way, it belongs to the first quarter or first tertiary section of the 14th century. Also, René Sperling has different opinions. Also, Charming really was without tick and fight. There is no fly on him. Do you hear me? Yes, Tina Vesaladze shares with you. She cannot agree more. So, now, concerning JOJUA's phrase, I beg your pardon, I cannot give all proofs. Yes, identification of the Queen of Queens of Marech and Queen of Queens Tamar. Yes. Yes, it was shared and adopted by one group of scientists, but one very close person close to me, he said that here we have pretty different Georgi. So it's impossible to have here other Georgi as Mary Brosset says. And when it was reviewed, it wasn't sure. Term Queen of Queens. I beg your pardon, but I don't know what a friend with Sira said. I have not read it, but Marech, Queen of Queens, Diopal. Yes, it's from Rishi, Gorge, mountains. We have other epigraphic documents and other pieces, and I have concluded that Dedopali, not Diopali. This is canonized without irrefutably. Yes, this phrase says Dedopali, and where we have Diopali. Yes, it's pretty different thing. See. So, in one case, this is the queen of the country, the spouse of the king. In another way, she is the spouse of grandee, spouse of feudal grant. KOURDAB, what you said? Yes, I saw this, but I never just plunge myself in this issue. Yes, but one says that Sudan is directly just written on the icon. Ilori Church, I know Georgi, and yes, I always try to support him, but yes, this topic I have set forth it several times at international conferences, even published. What's violated there? Yes, left corner below. Formerly, also it was impossible to read it, and then it was covered by the new layer of the timestamp. Then that lettering was washed down, and Yes. And icon representative paid visits there in 2011, and they told to Russians nothing is covered by white dyeing substance, so on. Yes, formerly it was possible to read them completely, and also the lettering by GEORGI, who is the editor of this church. And also Bernabelli deciphered this lettering. Anatoly KHATIA, he is alive, well being, and he writes that this is the heritage and monument of Georgian architecture. So, first restoration, rectangular roof was put. Russians disliked it, demolished it, and ordered to erect onion-like, in Russian style, onion-like cupola roof. Yes. So, I think the part of these works are in internet, not everything, but the issue of the restoration of ILIA is published in the preceding one of the international symposium. And now the son of Bamar. You said that, and you hold that GEORGI III is the son of Bamar the first. Thank you very much. Yes, of course. Out of question. Yes. Yes. Well, still, today, when we speak about chronology of judiciary study, Goneli Arafhamia, he shared this, and he even inserted him in this chronology. I wanted to say just this space. Thank you very much. Yes. Who has questions? Yes. Yes, Miss TAMAR Belashvili, she just coopted us, accompanied us a little bit, coopted us a little bit later to this conference, me and Bejan Khorala. Thank you for this very interesting discussion. I want also, may I? Hello. Irma Dolidze, a national agency of the preservation of cultural heritage, and maybe this issue is not clear and well known. I should like to say that agency is the unity of museums, and several museums, they connected with occupied territories, Exani Archaeological Museum. This structure, of course, it retains, and yes, and agency retains this structure, and part of our staff is there, another part is here, because it's very difficult to transgress the so-called border or line. Rules are very strict, and de facto authorities formerly did not deal with this museum, but now director was substituted, and even name he wanted to change. At least the work which agency had done, it's very positive one, but on this, right now, they accentuate their interest and increase their interest to this museum. Of course, there is another museum in Yahweh, Gorge. Yes, it's a refugee, a sort of refugee. And this museum structure, of course, is retained, and it's functioning is underway through different various programs and participates in different events and so there is one more museum which is very close. Something hinders her voice. So this very briefly concerning the museum activity and the situation. Of course, conference is very significant. It's all, yes, it's old as a mountain. So, and of course, it will be nice. I had no opportunity, it's pity, to participate completely. So, and in order to make everybody in the swim of very good event, it will be nice if you just insert it in online regime somewhere on YouTube or just in the internet. And TEMO's speech was very interesting. So I am very grateful. I extend my gratitude to organizers, and I want and I wish they got very interesting speeches, and it will be nice if we and other people who are interested in will have it online.
So to be published from the beginning, so when we are working on online platforms, so this is the wonderful opportunity. So on the maximum level, so to make outreach to the wide society. So I agree with Marika, maybe there was a conversation on that this platform will be very good, where we will have not only the transcripts of the online conferences or the live conferences or any materials that were published before. So something which is not in foreign language to be translated, it would be very good opportunity for everyone, for the interested society, for specialists, for researchers, and not only for politicians as well. So it would be very good means. So for having the base, scientific base, there all would be very clearly presented. And of course, the reports that are sent from Georgia to UNESCO headquarters regarding the status of the cultural monuments as the result of the armed conflict. Thank you very much regarding the live. So we have live conference, and there will be the transcript put there, and there will be the publication made. So, and it is delightful that we will have the publication of very interesting reports. I had the question I could not mention. So you have mentioned Joseph Ardzinba made the first map. So is it published in your work? So my work is 6-page, is small because the format did not give me opportunity to provide all this. And this map is kept in the Abkhazian State Museum on the grounds of this map. So Yuri Voronov's map was made. And one more thing, because we have a discussion, I will tell the good information. So the attitude towards the cultural heritage monument, so is divided by two parts by my observation. First is, so up to 2014, 2015, and then the attitude changed maybe earlier. So before that, they had not been interested in the status of this condition, but right now the Abkhazians emerged. So for example, then the restoration of Drander temple was made, and the floor was So the tiles was laid on the floor. So Abkhazians protested that. Also the bringing down of the Greek temple in Zebelda. So they protested it. We also objected to that from here. But the important thing is that young youth of Abkhazia protested against that. So and one of the officials resigned. This is the advance already. The attitude towards material, culture, monument changed. Their viewpoint changed, that this is their cultural heritage as well. It is not only Georgian. So, and I think that this is a welcoming asset, and on our side is very important. But Oleg Khashba, the old generation, still repeats that he says that all the inscriptions are made in the 30th, in the 1930th. So, and it is impossible that Ardzinba would put the tiles, so during the flood on the bridge, so and put the Georgian alphabet there. So it is impossible, something impossible. But unfortunately, this is also given in the textbook, and this is taught in schools to children, irrespective of the fact. Amongst the youth, there are the people so who are objecting that, and this is quite promising, and I'm delightful about this. Manana, did I respond to your question? So this is in Sukhumi, yes, it is in Sukhumi. This map, it was behind the glass in Abkhazian State Museum with the facsimile. So they had it in museum because this person had made a huge contribution before this museum. Right now, whether they have it or not, I cannot tell, but in Dortseva's description, there is no conversation on the map of the Abkhazian cultural monuments. So in 2020, Elena Ilotseva made a monograph, published a monograph. So is it appended to the Ardzinba's book? No, it is not appended to Ardzinba's book. So there is so-called dry information, dry part. So Yosef Ardzinba's books, that was published in 1958. So there many things has been changed there. So this analysis so pushed me to make this conclusion. This is very interesting because after the death of Stalin, the attitude changed. Ajinjali, so he's known with his anti-Georgian stance. So and this book has been edited by him. But there are many interesting things. I have already told you, and I will not repeat that. So many issues. For example, the measurements are there, so which he has taken. So, and the part of this monument disappeared. So, and many things are interesting, and I can tell you that. So the Department of the Monuments Protection has done that. So from the second half of the 30s, so Levan Chiulishvili, Leon Chervashidze, that Leon was learning the drawing, but they have so measured several expeditions visited there. But if we don't include Levan, if we don't take into account Levan Chervashidze, Levan Chiulishvili's work in totally, so we speak about the old architecture, so the clerical and mundane architecture. So the wonderful work of Mariam Didebulidze about so Gagra, the trend about which Mariam is conversing there. So I have the impression. So only Levan Chiulishvili is continuing this trend. So the exactly correct direction be set by Mariam there. So I would like also to mention that Dmitry Tumanishvili have wonderful work in so the history of Georgian and Abkhazian monuments. The overall picture of what was happening, how it was Georgian, really Georgian. So if it is translated well, so if good pictures will be put there, it is very important work. So we have this book, yes. So I omitted that, but this is the small volume. So I am implying the sizable monographic research embracing every monument, and it would be analysis so that we meet different forms. So some details are not Georgian, for example, on Dranda temple. So we don't have the analysis in aggregate in one monographic research, but the trends of Dimitri Tomanishvili, so they are wonderfully signified, and the directions which you mentioned in Gagra temple. So the Georgian art history should follow this way, but there was a lot of work. So, and we have many different monuments in Georgia, and maybe there was not enough expert of arts to research all this. And this issue stayed like that. So when you are not directly working on the monuments, even if you visited many times, and described on the photos, every time you should visit, you should see it from the beginning, and this is very hard. Yeah, you know this. Regarding Levan Cheulishvili's work, so his criticism was provided by Denis Belinsky and Andrei Vinogradov, more Vinogradov's language. So of the work, so the scientists have different language and different writing style. It is more Andrei Vinogradov's writing style, Levan Cheulishvili, so is very much criticized. So if you ask them in their works, all KHATIA was built by Byzantinians and Armenians. So I told them Temuri or Java, I don't remember. Then I read there about Abkhazian architecture. I have Denis Beletsky in my friends on Facebook, and he had his exhibition in Tbilisi, and he invited me. So then they published. So Northern Caucasus is full of the Alanian architecture, like Gergeti. So Western Georgia is Abkhazian architecture, even Metehi temple. So if Denis Chachkalia, if we take information of Metehi Chachkalia, so cathedral in Tbilisi is Abkhazian. So we don't have Georgian architecture nowhere. They don't recognize Chubinashvili's works, but they recognize only one thing, that Georgians could only eat well, drink well, and sing well. This is what they want to prove. So that we were inactive, lazy people who like dancing, singing, eating and drinking. Not only Russians say, but some people say it here, and this is a big crime. So they created a circle around Caucasia. So by 2015-19 publications, there is a circle, so that here we don't have Georgian monuments, so Georgian architecture. You cannot find the Georgian architecture anywhere. So, and we have to oppose them with our position, yeah. And this works should be translated as soon as possible, the old ones and new ones. What you say, Tamar? Our director knows for how many years we present this program, we produce this program regarding the translation, publication, websites, so participation in the Congress. So, but it requires, it requires a lot of funding. So Vinogradov one time blurted out that this is the order, this is the order, what can I do? They have a lot of funding, they are at every Congress, so they publish such a large book, and they say that put your applications in the competitions, regarding albums, and we should have a strategic line, strategic funding should be allocated. So good that Rustaveli Fund is assisting us, and advancing this, but a huge amount of money is necessary for translation at least. Tamar knows how much this translation costs. Tolmachevskaya, Serverov, Solovyov's works. So we shouldn't translate it in Georgian. So we should shame them. This Georgi Chubinashvili was writing in Russian. Maybe we create one database where all the Georgian information on Georgian architecture, on Ethno-Cultural school, what we were saying. So what Chubinashvili was saying, Abkhazian school, and 3 schools were singled out. In Abkhazia school is the Abkhazian architecture. And Denis Belitsky said that this is a Byzantine architecture, Byzantium architecture, Byzantine architecture. So, and these terms, so Ludmila Khuskova, so who we loved back in the past. So first book is called, so then in the Moscow published book, in the French public book, so it is called Eastern Lexical. So it has been 2 days the conference going on. We see that this is one of the main problems of translation. So and to conveying information somehow to the foreign language readers, especially that. Yesterday I was also speaking about the fact that so many these types of conferences have been conducted, but when we were planning this conference, we decided to do so to make it international. And of course, dear Marika, so the huge resources was spent for translation. So I will also respond to Irma, and totally I will say what results we will have from this project, from this event, because conference is not the only constituent part. This is only one constituent part. And I would like to say, Tamta has also mentioned, they have the records of the both transcripts of the both days. It will be placed in the internet. It will be accessible to any wishers. So we have in English language as well as in Georgian language. And I think that this is very important. On top of that, so reports, so compendium of the reports on both languages, which will be printed on a hard copy, but the circulation will not be large. It will be also placed online and will be accessible to all. And we wanted that this closed circle to be broken. So I don't plan speaking about the fact that we wanted to do this, that we were doing this for the first time, but what we do, it will be another step and will be useful for this process, and will start all. So it will be very important. Of course, it should not stop now. With Rustaveli Fund, we have had a conversation that it may so become of regular nature, and it will be very important, the fact that if the analogous conference will be moved outside the borders, and for international engagement, it will become more important. So as a minimum, because the audience, the listeners will change, and the number of the foreign listeners will be wider, those who listen to that. And this is the information given on the academic level. So there was such a moment that first time in this conference, we decided 2 main topics, 2 main problems. So one, historical cultural context and the angle, so to which was dedicated today's work and which is necessary. So if we represent this direction as a minimum all, and the second is the armed conflict and during the occupation, cultural heritage and the problems that pop up there, the legal direction. So from the angle of the international law, it is important. And I think that there was very good partner in this regard. So the Georgian Blue Shield Committee, and a lot of thanks to them one more time. But at the same time, the International Blue Cross, its president, and I would like to say that this is a summative speech, what I say, Peter Stone, as well as Brian Daniels, who joined us, Emma Karlev, who also joined, Igor Poshivailo, and from Ukraine, we have some other speakers as well. And this is impossible, this beginning, if it stops here. So it seems that within one conference, so putting all this will not be oriented at the result that finally all of us would like to have. So if this collaboration continues and in total analysis will be made in different direction of the problems, and there will be the access appearing to all this information. This is the result about which we have been speaking for 2 days. A lot of thanks to every speaker. So because every speech have been important of you and your engagement in this conference. So to all the public structures and organizations that made this possible and made the scale to this, which this problem has and really should have. And it gives us the promise that we can be doing some steps more purposefully. And translation can be said that this is the question number 1. But the cause is complicated by the financial side. And the second point is that it is protracted in time because the quality translation of the fundamental work requires a lot of time, and we cannot get results immediately, instantaneously. But we are not of double mind that we have to start that. And the more institutions, the more organization, there are no doubt that we should start that. And the more institutions will be involved, it will be good. So it will be better. So because this is very important cause. So and at the end, I would like to say thanks to those who were involved in the conference, Tanta KHOSROSHVILI, Makagabashvili, Mananatelzadze, that without them, this would not have happened. So they bore the brunt of the organization of this conference. We have 1 month ahead. The process is going on because at the end of the month, we will have the total result. So we have the publication. We have this information uploaded on the site. So we have in the National Center of Manuscripts, the virtual tour and a slideshow, also virtual exhibition. So the real exhibition was planned for our photo laboratory materials, and this will be also transferred in the online space. So online area, this will be placed together, and we hope that we will be collaborating very actively with you. So a lot of thanks to you, and goodbye.